Good day, everyone. On behalf of Global CIO Forum and Software AG, I welcome you all to this virtual summit on business strategy to IT execution. Before we kickstart the summit, let me just give you a very brief introduction about the event. In these challenging times, organizations need to continuously adapt to rapidly changing digital transformation trends. But this demands a strategic business alignment. To enable technology to support business change, organizations need solutions which can make IT and business transformation easy. In this virtual summit, we will discuss how Software AG with its offerings, ARIS and Alphabet, helps you and the organizations in making the best IT decisions by understanding when, where, how, and why you need to make the change. For the event today, we have with us from the Software AG team, Sezme Iroglu, Transformation Solutions Manager, and Sadiq Alshara, Principal Business Consultant. I welcome you both to this event. But before we kickstart the event, here are some basic housekeeping rules. All attendees are on mute throughout the session, so please do post your questions through the chat option, and we will be happy to take all of those at the end of this session. And not just that, we will also be running a poll during the event, which will be launched after the speaker presentation. So request you all to participate in that poll. Without any further delay, I welcome Sezme to take it forward from here.
Thank you, Manali, for the introduction. And I would like to welcome all of our participants from my side, and good afternoon again. So for today's session, as Manali introduced, we're going to talk about how basically business strategies can be executed. And of course, when we talk about the strategy execution, in these times, we are basically looking almost all strategies touching to the digital or to the IT. So basically, digital transformation is almost part of every business strategy. And today we're going to basically try to understand how basically this can be achieved and how Software AG can help you to basically run all these journey. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, obviously, most of the time we think it's all about technology. So when we say digital transformation, we think it's all about moving everything to mobile and making all the products and services accessible to the customers through different channels. Or we're basically talking about modernizing the IT infrastructures and moving applications to cloud. Or we're talking about analytics and artificial intelligence and utilizing these capabilities more and more within business decisions, or let's say customer interactions. Or are we talking about robotic process automation, where we basically want to get rid of the manual work and make it all done by the robots. So these are all actually true and relevant. But if we look at from let's say a little bit higher perspective, these are all the tools, yes, you can use for a successful digital transformation. But basically, digital transformation is not only about utilizing some new technology on the existing way of doing business. This is actually, to understand it a little bit, I want to introduce these three concepts probably you're already familiar with. So the first one is digitization. When we talk about digitization, as you may already know, this is all about taking the physical, let's say, assets and basically transforming them into ones and zeros. So getting rid of, let's say, paper-based forms, or keeping the records on this paper and moving them to databases, to digital forms. So this was kind of the first step of, let's say, the whole digital journey. And then the digitalization, early 2000s, we were basically introduced all the ERP and everything, so that all the manual, let's say, process steps were replaced by systems, workflows, let's say, forms. So yeah, this is basically taking the manual steps, taking the manual, let's say, forms and using systems for that. But now we're talking about digital transformation and how digital transformation is different than this. Basically, digital transformation is all about rethinking the way that you do business. So it's not only about, yes, getting rid of the manual steps, but looking at your business model, looking at your products and services that you offer to the customers, your channels, and the way that you interact with your customers, how you basically generate revenue through your revenue streams. So this is not only just taking some business problems or let's say business activities and putting onto the systems, but digital transformation is all about, as I said, rethinking the whole business model, business strategy, with let's say digital capabilities, and then executing this. So before these, let's say, digitization or digitalization, it was seen as mostly as like one-time programs or initiatives that the organizations were executing. But now, as I think you may agree, digital transformation is not an initiative, is not a program. It is something continuous. So continuously, you need to really keep an eye on the market demands, what your competitors are doing, what your customers are expecting, what are the available technologies, and then basically continuously revising your business model and strategy, and then keep executing on that. And how that can be possible, or how can basically software AG can support such a scenario. So just to come up with a small, let's say, approach or a methodology on this topic, what we believe is, before actually you start on executing or you start using those tools that we mentioned, like all the mobile, cloud, artificial intelligence, which is the execution part of the, let's say, the transformation, what we believe is the right starting point should be, first of all, understanding your current way of working and basically designing where you want to be. And the starting point, of course, you need to start by rethinking your business model, as I have explained, all, let's say, the products and services that you offer, your channels, the way that you interact with the customers, and of course, the business strategy, which is defined based on that. And then, of course, you need to start thinking about, okay, how you're going to execute this strategy. And then, yeah, processes are especially kind of the tool that you have to basically make this strategy achievable. And so you need to start designing on, okay, how you're going to execute this strategy. What is the way of working? And once this is there, you basically have your current state and you have where you want to be. And now there is a gap in between, and you need to basically fulfill this gap. So you need to start planning. From a digital transformation perspective, unless you're basically coming up with a new startup where you're starting from scratch, which is 99% of the time, that's not the case. We always deal with basically running organizations, which are there maybe for more than 100 years. So you already have some existing, let's say, IT landscape, or let's say IT capabilities. So before you actually start planning on how you're going to fulfill this gap, you need to understand what are your current capabilities. And based on that, you can start basically planning, or let's say you can start building your roadmaps on how you're going to achieve that target state of business using the existing and also using the planned capabilities. And once that plan is in place, then you can start executing on that. Here, of course, the execution, it may require different, let's say, capabilities depending on where you want to be and what you want to achieve. As software AG here, for this execution case, we mainly offer capabilities around integration, automation, robotic process automation, as well as Internet of Things. But this part, as I said, depends on really what that gap is and what IT capabilities you need. And then at the end, basically, you need to keep continuously monitoring and improving this, let's say, digital transformation. And as software AG, we support you during this journey through our product portfolio, which is ARIS, Alphabet, and Web Methods. So for today's webinar, we will be talking about mainly ARIS and Alphabet. which is ARIS is our business transformation solution focusing on process analysis, and Alphabet plays the role in the IT transformation side of the things. So after this introduction, without further ado, now I would like to hand over to my colleague Sadik Al-Shara, so who will take you through the business transformation part of the things, and he will be talking about how processes are key on executing your strategy. And afterwards, I will continue with the IT transformation part. So this is the agenda for today. So over to you, Sadik.
Thank you, Chesmi, for the introduction. Thank you all for attending. So my name is Sadik Al-Shara, and I will be basically presenting the business transformation part, as Chesmi mentioned. And with that, let us start. So basically, what we need to take into consideration is uncovering our process gems. Now, first of all, if anybody can't hear me or if anything is not clear, please inform me directly. So when we talk about processes, we talk about the idea of how we want to utilize them in the correct manner. As Chesmi mentioned, there are ideas of digital transformation, of going with technology and whatnot, but it really depends on the scenario that we have at hand. So an example I would like to start with is basically, okay, for some reason my slide is not, yeah. So we have here 3 products. One was released in the 60s, one was released in the 80s, and another one was also released in the 80s. Now, what do these products have in common? Not only the fact that they are gaming oriented, so to speak, but they were created by this man, which is Mr. Gunpei Yokoi. This person was an engineer at Nintendo back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And he basically pioneered a lot of different ways of creating value out of all technologies in a sense. And he basically revolutionized the industry with these creations. First, by creating this Ultra Hand, which was an extending arm. Then he created one of the first portable machines, which is the Game & Watch. If you're old as me, you might remember it. And he also created our traditional D-pad that we find on our controllers. Now, with those creations, he basically created the ultimate gem for Nintendo, and that was the Game Boy. And the Game Boy was a very strange product. It basically spanned from 1989 to 2003 with different variations and with incremental updates. And even though in the market, at the same time, there were other portables that had colored screens, that had a lot more newer technology and cutting edge technologies, they failed. And when we say they failed, it's not by a small amount. The Game Boy was able to sell over 100 million units. Now, looking back at how it was created and back to Mr. Gunpei Yokoi, he had this concept called lateral thinking with withered technology. And the idea he tried to emphasize here is that when we try to find a solution, regardless of how it ends, whether it ends with a technology implementation, whether it ends with optimizing a process, we need to think about how we can utilize our current resources, gather more insights on what we have, and apply lateral thinking on it. So in this case, he noticed that during that time, when all the other competitors were spending much more money on colored screens, there was an influx in the market with LCD screens because of Casio and Texas Instruments. So he basically utilized that in the creation of the Game Boy, saving battery life, saving cost, making it cheaper, making it more portable, and whatnot. Now, taking that concept into question, when we say lateral thinking, it has been applied in many different ways. But if we want to try and look at it from a process perspective, what we need to do is that before we decide on any digital transformation journey, before we actually decide on what processes we need to improve and what we need to do, and the importance of technology, we need to gain proper process insight, more visibility on our KPIs. And when I say that, also the stakeholders of the organization must have that visibility for proper strategy alignment and discovering the optimization potential. So how do we achieve this? And what would be the manner for us to uncover these gems? Simply, Vpa uncovers hidden gems. It's the true way to start any journey that we have in questions in terms of digital transformation or otherwise any improvement project that we might find beneficial for our organization. Here at Software AG, we are proudly the creators of ARIS, and this is the leading tool in the market in terms of business process management and analysis. It's basically been in the market for almost 30 years with thousands of customers around the globe. And most importantly, which I'm really proud of, is the idea of having over 600,000 community members actively contributing to the tool and giving suggestions for its implementation. And when I say it's been in the tool for 30 years, I'm not kidding. All these features have been added throughout the years in terms of process analysis, in terms of enterprise management, in terms of process mining, in terms of compliance, customer journeys, you name it. If it's process related, then most probably ARIS has it. And the key thing to note here is that you will find other tools in the market that have such capabilities, but it's almost impossible to find this abundance of capabilities within one platform, within one feature set, seamlessly integrated with one another. So when we talk about ARIS and Vpa and digital transformation in general, we need to ask ourselves, how do we transform the organization and what are the challenges that we might encounter? So first off, we always have to have our strategic vision. Through that, we set our goals, we set our objectives, we define what we want to do in terms of the plans for our organization, we set our KPIs, and from there, we can start creating our processes, understanding our business and how things work. Getting that understanding with that insight, we start rethinking and optimizing those processes, communicating and collaborating across the organization of whatever improvement potential we have, what projects we might implement to actually facilitate this digital transformation, which leads us to success. Now, the challenges that we usually encounter in these cases is the alignment between the executives and management and also the normal stakeholders. There's always this gap where you have some people looking at the future, looking at where we want to go with the organization, and other people just looking at how are we implementing our processes. Then, of course, because of lack of transparency and visibility of the processes, we always have this problem with adoption, especially when we're trying to implement change management into such implementations. So we need a tool that can fit any business process maturity level of an organization and build forward with that. So when I talk about Vpa maturity, I'm basically talking about where is the organization in terms of its processes? Do they have the processes documented, or are they structured? Did they reach process excellence? Are they measured and controlled? These are all different levels that we find in organizations today. And you'd be surprised how hard it is to find an organization that actually has reached operational excellence. And with those organizations, we're talking about a lot of dedication and implementing the right tools that will enable us to perform all these steps whenever needed. The beauty about ARIS is that it's plug and play. So if I was at level 1, we can land in the organization and expand the levels from there. And it all, again, depends on where the organization wants to go with its initiatives. So when we talk about operational excellence, we need to look at the key idea of having an operating model, which we mentioned in the digital transformation journey slide. So we'd be asking ourselves, how do I create an operating model that has all the components that I need in terms of understanding my business, improving upon it, and continuing with my journey? So if we reverse engineer this image and start with the customer journey from the right-hand side, it's all about the customer. It's all about gaining the satisfaction of the customer based on their needs and us understanding the market trends and what's needed. So back to the example of Gunpei Yokoi, he basically understood that the customer wanted a long battery life in their gaming devices, and reverse engineered from there. So when we put the customer basically as our target and think about how our products and services are serving our customers, we then start to understand, okay, that means I need to have sound and captured business processes that are aligned with my strategy and abide by the laws and regulations, whether of the country or my organization or whatever that may be. And I get also input from the pillars of the organization, which are the resources, the people, the IT systems, and I have this governance and control over my processes where every improvement, every change request, every idea is shared across the organization and at the same time managed. This leads to a structured approach in reaching the satisfaction and delivering the best products and services possible. Now, when we talk about ARIS and trying to deliver this message, ARIS basically has a ton of features, as we saw. Just to quickly go through a few of them that concern processes, we're talking about rich modeling content to design the entire business. I'm talking about processes, customer journeys, IT landscapes, policy trees, risk diagrams. These models have been added over the years and been accumulated based on the best methodologies in the market and the best practices that's available within the industry. Of course, we need reporting analysis. We need to understand how are our processes performing, what are our KPIs, do some ad hoc analysis, do some simulation and understand what bottlenecks I have. From there and from the results of the analysis, we can move from status quo to the to be. And ARIS has a ton of features in terms of after the documentation phase and the designing phase of the diagrams, we can basically perform whatever analysis is required and gather the outputs and based upon that, act upon it. Of course, we mentioned we need a collaboration environment. We need to have transparency and bring the processes to life among the users and the stakeholders. We don't want stagnant processes and stagnant diagrams that don't improve and don't move along with within the organization. So ARIS also provides a robust collaboration environment and, as we mentioned, governance and control to manage the change methodologically and have proper change management. So we have a single point of truth for our processes managed from strategy to business with design and analysis, making use of the wisdom of the crowd. Of course, many customers have reported enhanced quality and increased efficiency and savings in costs and time across the organization in terms of understanding their processes with the analysis capabilities and documentation capabilities of ARIS. Now let's talk about some trends and challenges of 2021. Now, based on the IDC Research Center, it's been estimated that in 2022 or by 2022, there will be 2.3 trillion invested in digital transformation. And sadly, only 5% of initiatives will result in performance improvements. So why is that? We say that basic idea is that because we don't learn from the implementations that we have executed, we don't learn from our processes that we have deployed, whether they are deployed manually, whether they are deployed through automation. It's this type of insight that's also important in the cycle of process management and process analysis. So we solve it with process mining, and we ask questions when we use process mining. How do my processes behave in reality? We find that after designing the processes and then going through an implementation and going through the project of automating or digitizing my processes, it's totally different from what was planned and designed in accordance to the strategy of the organization. I need to ask myself, or we need to ask ourselves, did we fulfill the goals that are relevant to our organization? What are the effects of any recent changes in the market? Do I have any bottlenecks? What are the status of the key performance indicators that I have? So what we basically do with process mining, we connect with any system that has an implemented workflow, whether we connect directly through its database or we can check historical data or even ERP systems. Basically, it's a flexible way of connecting, and we re-engineer the process and design it automatically visually. So we're basically doing some process discovery and understanding how the processes are actually being implemented in reality. And this is all very seamless and easy within the tool. It uses very strong algorithmic engines to take all the historical data and recreate the process instances that have been implemented in a certain time period. Now we take these processes and we start analyzing them in terms of our SLAs, our KPIs, and provide these analysis capabilities and these screens and charts and diagrams to the people of the organization. This will enable us to do root cause mining, to understand root causes, for instance, of bottlenecks or not being conformant with a certain process that we designed, or maybe we haven't fulfilled a certain KPI. All these types of instances, we will be able to compare them to reality and to our strategy. So gaining this insight, not only from the design phase, but also after execution, then taking back this input, redesigning and improving our processes based on that, and then re-implementing them again. And the more this is done, the easier it will be, because there will be utilized and unified resources across the processes. But most importantly, we need to keep in mind that for this to work, we have to have our processing and strategy design in place. We can't just start process mining. Now, technically we can, but it would make a much bigger difference if we had a strategy and our enterprise process map, the way we do business, already designed to have some benchmarking point, or to have a point of reference of comparison, to have a vision of where do we want to go with this analysis. Because at the end of the day, mining with no vision really leads to nowhere. And most probably what will happen is analysis paralysis, where people are looking at the data, but they really don't know what to do with it. Okay, so I have a bottleneck here, but what's the priority of my organization? Is it cutting costs, or is it basically providing the best service? So we need to have the strategy, the processes in place for us to be able to benefit with process mining. And having ARIS, having both of them integrated together, process mining and business process design within one tool, seamlessly enables that. Now, of course, a lot of customers have reported increased process efficiency, enhanced quality, reduced costs, and the ease of implementing the strategies, which also reduces the cost substantially. Lastly, we'll talk quickly about RPA, robotic process automation. And this is where the power of AI and machine learning would meet with the power of cognitive and logical thinking. So it's when we think about robotic process automation, we're thinking, okay, that means we're replacing certain workforces or whatever. No, we need to look at it that there are things we are good at as people, as humans, especially in cognitive logical thinking. We can utilize our time while the bots or the robots do the work for us. So what are we basically talking about when I say bots? So it's a software which is implemented within an organization to perform repetitive tasks instead of us doing the tedious and repetitive tasks that takes our time and wastes our time and let's say deprives us from the ability to utilize our times elsewhere. The use cases for such cases is, for instance, transferring large amounts of data, or for instance, if we're consolidating financial statements, or if we're doing repetitive emails or mass emails from time to time. These bots can actually be installed on the machines, learn what they are doing, and basically do these processes instead of us wasting our time with them. Now, the beauty about RPA and implementing it in ARIS is that they fit together perfectly. From one end, you have ARIS and process mining covering the process from a business perspective and from an end-to-end point of view, talking about the overall outcome. But when we're talking about robotic process automation, we're actually talking about the tasks that are being implemented within the processes and the sub-tasks within the processes, to the point of how many times clicks are being performed on a mouse while the work is being done. So you have one end bottom up, basically from the RPA perspective, and you have one end top down from the ARIS business analysis and process mining perspective. So how does RPA work, or what's its journey? Basically, at least how we do it at Software AG, with process mining, we understand the processes, and as we said, with its analysis capabilities, we identify any bottlenecks that may exist take these candidate processes and these candidate issues that we feel are suitable for automation and give it to the intelligent task mining engine, which then would go through these bottlenecks, these processes that were suggested, and then decide where automation is suitable or not. Then, with the capability of the designing in ARIS, we can design these changes in the process landscape and to the minute detail with step-by-step information. Then, when we do that, there is this option of basically with one click, we can generate the automation procedure or the automation bot and go look at that, do some tweaks, make sure everything's okay, and then deploy it. And that's that. And back to our analysis and dashboarding capabilities, that's where we will then also not only take the manual results of the processes, but take the results of the bot themselves. And the same concept of improving and continuing with the cycle of Vpa. Now, we have been placed in the leaders quadrant in terms of task mining and process mining with Zenith zones. We're proud of that, of course, especially that it is very hard to find process mining and task mining within one tool that also supports process analysis, design, and collaboration and governance at the same time. So if you remember, we started with the idea of what are the challenges we will encounter. Believe me, when we implement the proper business process analysis phases from strategy to designing to process mining and so on, we will basically remove all these challenges and whatever implementation it may be. It can be regular automation or digitization. It can be RPA, robotic process automation, or it can be even improving the processes themselves. Surely these limitations would be removed. And then going on, we just wanted to end by saying we have a lot of customers around the globe in different industries, and we have a strong partner network. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sadek, for taking us through the business transformation journey and how we can basically support the journey of the organizations through our capabilities with ARIS. Now, in the second part of this webinar, I will continue with the IT transformation, which we basically fulfill the capabilities using our product called Alphabet. Now, talking about the IT transformation. Now, so far from Sadek's presentation, we understand that digital transformation, of course, it doesn't mean only IT transformation. You need to understand really how you need to transform the business, starting from the strategy through processes and how you can manage all that change. But of course, there are the IT or the digital side of the things where we basically need to utilize all the capabilities that are brought by the technologies. Now, I would like to start with a small teaser. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the mention in this photo, or maybe you're familiar with the name, which is Winchester Mystery House. Now, the what is interesting for us in this let's say mention, if you look at the photo, it's just nice looking property, but for us, what is important is the way that actually it was built. So this lady here called Sarah Winchester, so she was actually the wife of the owner of Winchester rifles in the 19th century in US. So she was quite wealthy, and she wanted to build a house. The way that she wanted to build that house is she didn't want to design the house or plan the whole construction before building it. So she said maybe she wanted to have like a challenge, and she basically started building this house without actually planning or designing it. So what happened is actually, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse cursor, but you can see like a door here that is basically opening to nowhere, no balcony, nothing, and that type actually just goes out. Basically, this was the result, that it took actually 38 years to build this house, and actually she passed away before completing it. She spent over 5 million US dollars, and I kind of remind you that this was in 19th century, so it was quite a lot of money. And the result is that this house has 160 rooms. But what is more interesting is there are doors like the one that I basically highlighted that's opening nowhere. Sometimes just you open the door and you see a wall, or there are staircases that are not leading anywhere. There are chimneys that doesn't reach to the ceiling. So basically, this house is a kind of a reflection of building things without planning and designing. So whenever we talk about actually, IT architectures or enterprise architecture or managing the IT, this was kind of the example that we used to use. Now, I actually kind of think that this example is not good enough anymore, because now the IT portfolios or IT landscape is not anymore, let's say, single application centric. So before, yes, there was the ERP system. Most of the processes were running on that, or for banking, it was the core banking that that would cover most of the applications. But now, actually, we are looking at something more complex, and we're trying to keep up with these business needs, all these changes or transformation requirements from business in a way more complex environment. So that's why it's not only a single building now, it's more like managing and planning a city where you have different kind of users and with different kind of expectations and demands. So if you think about a city, you need accommodation, you need kind of commercial areas, you need social services, hospitals, schools, you need entertainment, you need parks and everything. So you have different kind of users and you have different kind of needs from those users. And what you do is, yes, you have, let's say, applications, or in our case, it's the buildings, which are in different shapes, basically serving these requirements, and basically in, let's say, different kind of, let's say, features. And of course, it's not only that you meet these requirements, but also these applications, technologies, they need to be connected, or they need to be integrated as well. So basically, the data is flowing between them. So it's not anymore just like the Winchester house that you're building a house, but basically managing transformation within a, let's say, organization that has, let's say, quite a large IT environment. It is like managing a city. Now, what is the reality? Okay, this is the ideal case and it looks neat and tidy, but if you look at most of the organizations, we are actually seeing some IT landscapes like this, because you have all sorts of different kind of applications, legacy applications, modern applications, hybrid applications between cloud and on-premise installations. So it is quite a bit of a challenge to manage an environment like this. And we're talking about, digital transformation, business, they're demanding new capabilities, they're demanding new technologies, and basically the hype in the market is growing. Yes, we need to implement this new solution. So it is quite a challenge. And of course, the integration between this, although you imagine that everything would be perfect, sometimes it looks like this, where you basically lose the visibility and control over how the data is exchanged between the systems, where it's stored, and how you deal with this. Now, what is, let's say, the recipe? So with an effort to kind of, let's say, define on how you can manage the whole IT transformation, how you can, let's say, meet these demands while keeping control on the IT landscape. What we think is that the starting point should actually be discovering the current landscape, or basically gaining the visibility on what you currently have. So this is kind of the traditional enterprise architecture management approach, where basically you need to understand First of all, the business side of the things, which actually Sadek has already mentioned through your operating model, the strategy, processes, customer journeys, policies, and procedures, which is basically the business architecture. And then you need to basically create the connection to your IT capabilities and IT architecture. So what are the capabilities provided by IT? Which applications are providing these capabilities? Which technologies these applications are running on? What is the data that is exchanged between these systems? And even on the physical level, what are the devices that are basically supporting these technologies to run? So this is basically the starting point. You need to understand your whole IT portfolio. The second step is now you need to align with business. Now, how you can align with business? You need to understand basically what are the strategic initiatives, what are the drivers that are coming from business, what are the business capabilities that are needed, or all sorts of demands. Basically, you need to gather the inputs and you need to basically filter, you need to prioritize, you need to understand what is conflicting or what is overlapping. And once it's there, and once you have the visibility on your current IT landscape, then it's all about planning and managing this change through project and portfolio management, through road mapping, through solution design or solution planning. So if you agree with this methodology, then you see that you need a lot of different capabilities to basically achieve this. And how we can support such a methodology is, as I have mentioned, through our IT portfolio management solution, which is Alphabet. So basically, Alphabet supports this methodology starting from the discovering the current landscape through application portfolio governance, technology portfolio governance, or let's say the data architecture. And then it helps you to align with business through strategic management and also let's say business and IT relationship management, which you can utilize to capture all the demands that are coming from business, or even the processes that you have in hand and what are the, let's say, the to-be stages and what are the demands for IT to implement. And of course, based on that, it's not only that you're focusing on, let's say, your capabilities as of today, but also how you're going to manage this architecture in the future. So what's your roadmap? So you can start designing your, let's say, feature or to-be architecture, and you can basically start defining or let's say implementing the projects that will take you there. And of course, this is from a governance, from a process perspective, makes sense. But also, you need to keep in mind there are two other dimensions. So one is the financial management side of the things. So since you're not, let's say, managing your this whole IT landscape with unlimited budget, you need to understand what is the existing cost on licenses, on services and everything. And then, of course, what is the best way to implement this feature state. And of course, then also you cannot really ignore the risk management side of the thing. So you need to understand really what are the risks that are associated with your IT landscape on applications or even on the projects, and how you can basically manage this risk. So all these capabilities are provided by Alphabet. And of course, if you now combine this with what Sadek has mentioned with ARIS, focusing on the, let's say, the business transformation side of the things, Alphabet and ARIS works in an integrated way. So the business architecture supported by ARIS, IT architecture supported by Alphabet. Together, basically, we provide all the required capabilities end-to-end for transformation. Now, these are the capabilities, and let's say, what are the critical success factors? Or yes, these capabilities are there, but what is our approach, or what makes Alphabet different than any other, let's say, solution that is claiming basically doing the same thing? So to be let's say simple, I have identified three let's say critical success factors. So the first one is data collection. Now, if you remember from the methodology, I mentioned that, yes, the first thing is basically you need to switch the lights on, or you need to gain this visibility on really what's going on. So the first part is basically gaining this visibility or simply the data collection on your architecture or the landscape. So here, basically, what we or how we think is, so Alphabet is very much data oriented, and we basically want this data collection part as simple as possible. And what we provide here is, first of all, Alphabet comes with a built-in meta model, so which means that you don't need to spend your precious time on looking for frameworks and working with, let's say management consulting companies, or taking months to come up with a meta model that will help you to define your architecture. So Alphabet comes with a built-in meta model, which has been tested for over 20 years. So, and you can immediately start using that, or basically, if you need to extend it, you can basically start. It's a starting point, basically, for your journey. And then the way that you, let's say, collect the data, in most of the solutions, you will see that it's all about diagrams. Whenever you need to do something, you need to build a new diagram. So for some certain, let's say, needs, yes, diagrams are the answer, but not for everything. If you just want to understand really what business capability is the most expensive one for me, or if I have basically overlaps between applications serving for the same purpose, I don't need diagrams to understand this. All I need is the necessary data, basically, around this area. So for this one, our approach is that you can basically collect this data in different ways. So we give you the freedom, for example, to collect it through forms and wizards, even using workflows. So for the same application data, different basically departments or roles within IT can contribute. Or you can simply generate data collection templates like Excel spreadsheets, and this can be basically filled by, again, different people, and you can simply upload. Or we basically offer extensive integration capabilities, because some of the data that we talk about here is already, let's say, residing in different kind of systems. Like it may be your CMDB system, it may be your ITSM system, or even your ERP system. And Alphabet comes with a, let's say, add-on called Data Interchange Framework. So it looks like an ETL tool within Alphabet, which can connect to these external systems, so you can keep the data flowing instead of manually, basically, feeding into the system. Now, this is the first, I would say, critical success factor. The second one is, of course, what you're doing with this data. Once you get that visibility, and this is basically kind of the point where most of the organizations actually fail, because yes, they spend all this time defining this meta model and basically populating it with data, but then they basically miss the value, or they can simply not utilize this data, because the whole point is, I want to use data for decision making, for IT decision making, to have this visibility. And our approach within Alphabet is, if you have seen it before, you will realize that it is full of dashboards and reports, basically serving different kind of purposes. So the whole solution is built on this purpose, to give you the visibility on what is going on with your IT portfolio, which applications are the most expensive, which technologies are reaching end of life, let's say, which business processes or capabilities are provided by which applications, how changing, let's say, a certain technology in my portfolio will impact the business. So all sorts of monitoring and analysis capabilities, because we think this is the key, and we think all these data and efforts actually should be used for decision making. And last but not the least is actually the planning, because all what we talk about so far, we talk about, yes, gaining the visibility, discovering the current landscape, analyzing it. But of course, you need to have a plan as well. So what applications will be providing in the future, let's say, these business capabilities, when are you going to migrate to the new version of an application or switch to a completely different application, or when you're going to move an application to cloud. So this all should be visible, and you need to be planning ahead, so that you can see where actually you want to be in the future, so that you can plan your budget, you can plan your, let's say, resources, or whenever a new, let's say, demand from business comes, you have the visibility on, let's say, your future plans, so that you can basically plan for that certain demand as well. Now, yeah, Alphabet again here provides the planning capabilities through road mapping as well as project portfolio management. And of course, just a few analyst slides. So the important thing here is we're basically talking about both from an enterprise architecture management perspective, which is the kind of the traditional approach where you want to have all these architectures defined, but also we're talking about IT portfolio management, which looks at it from a more strategic perspective, taking into, let's say, the strategy into consideration, the financial aspect into consideration. And of course, our approach is recognized by Gartner as well, that we are basically in the leaders quadrant, both in enterprise architecture management solutions as well as IT portfolio analysis solutions. So, and also we are the only vendor basically that is present in both of these analyst reports. And just to sum up, of course, what is the value, or what is the benefit of, let's say, using a solution like Alphabet and managing the IT in this way is one is obviously reducing the cost, because you have a better visibility on your applications, the capabilities provided, or basically the technology components that you're using, and of course you can enable the financial management, so you have a much better visibility and control on the cost of the things. And then of course the second thing is the agility. Once you have that visibility, whatever basically the demand that comes from the business, you can plan better, you can achieve better, and you can basically use your resources in a much more efficient way. And then of course this takes you to reducing the project risk as well, because with this visibility before actually you start your projects, you will basically see, okay, how this will look in the future and what is the gap, and so you can plan the projects better, and you basically reduce the risk of failing projects. And of course, since we're talking about here, for example, the agility, it's not only the demands that are coming from business, but of course the resilience. As we all experienced in the past year, that sometimes whatever you plan, things like the pandemic can happen, and you may need to basically respond quickly. So this may be, of course, like the pandemic, or it may be something like let's say security issue, or it may be some let's say dramatic change in the market that you have to respond quickly. Of course, again, with the visibility and agility, you have the chance to respond to such let's say circumstances, of course, in a quicker way. Now, with this, I would like to conclude my session as well, and I would like to thank all our participants for being here today. And I think now we will continue with the questions if you have any. Thank you again, and we will be here for the questions. I think you can use the webinar tools for posting your questions if you haven't done already.
Okay, thank you, Sazmin and Sabek, for a much detailed presentation, especially supported by historical and everyday examples and use cases. Now let's launch the poll, what we have. So I request all the attendees to please answer these poll questions. We have two of these. The first one is, if you are looking for software tool and EA for operational efficiencies, what is your project transformation stage now? Your options are, and please select only one: A, very early stage; B, IT selection stage; C, POC stage. Please vote. Okay, so we have the result of this quick poll. 73% of the respondents have said that it's in a very early stage, and 27% feel that IT selection stage is there where project transformation is, and 0% say that it's at POC stage. Let's go to our next question. Which of the following, in your opinion, is the greatest opportunity and threat in the next 12 months? Option A, document, analyze, standardize, and improve processes. Option 2, aligning business objectives, processes, and IT structures. Option number 3, ability to quickly change processes without changing underlying processes. Need software tool to manage organization's IT portfolio. You can begin your voting now. Okay, so we have the results with us. 50% feel that the ability to quickly change the process without changing underlying applications is the is amongst the opportunities and threats for the coming months. 17% feel that document, analyze, and standardize in improving the process is the another way out, and option B and C is what 17% each we have got. Thank you very much for attending the poll. Now quickly, let's move on to the questions we are receiving. Sadiq, I'll come to you for the first question we have.
Yeah.
So the first question which we have coming in, you explained about the robotic process automation in software AG offerings. So the attendees want to know that is automation, be it RPA or digitization, is this the only way to go?
Can you repeat just the second half? Is what?
Is this the only way to go, the digitization or through RPA? Are these the digitization processes the only way to go forward?
No. I mean, it really depends again on the results of any analysis you do. You may reach to a point where you need to do digitization. You may reach to a point where you need to do robotic process automation. You may even reach a point you just need to fix your processes manually and not take them to any automation level at all. So it's really dependent, but no, it's not the only way to go.
Okay. So another one I have coming in is, what is the average time frame for results to show up and become accepted by an organization as resulting from digital or business transformation, hence create a positive feedback loop?
This question is for me. What is the time for what? Sorry.
What is the average time frame for results to show up and become accepted by an organization, which will be resulting from?
Again, these things depend, of course, on the complexity of the processes at hand. Now, and on what is the implementation we are talking about. So, for instance, we're talking about RPA, and we're talking about medium complexity implementation. We might be talking about like around 6 months, but this really depends on the number of processes. It can be less if the complexity is less, and it can be even more if, for instance, the organization doesn't even have their processes documented. So it really depends on also the maturity level the organization is in and the amount of work. So if I'm at a stage where I already have my processes documented and they are being measured, then it's a matter of implementation. But if I'm still at a stage where my documentation is not structured, then you need to go through that exercise.
Okay, Sadiq, could I please request you to switch on your cam?
I thought I was switched it on, honestly. Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're not able to see you.
Is it working now?
Yeah. We can. Okay. Okay, so thanks for answering that. Moving on, what are the critical success factors for enterprise architecture implementations?
I think this is for Chesmi.
Sorry?
Is Chesmi on the line, or shall I handle the answer?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Now, the critical success factors, and the number one would be data and the availability of data. That's basically the most important critical success factor, because at least I'm answering in terms of the usage of our tool Alphabet. Because as long as the data is there and we can import it into the tool, it really becomes just a matter of using the existing and out-of-the-box meta model. But also, what happens then, some of the challenges that we need to take into consideration is the workflows of maintaining the data within the enterprise architecture. So you would need to have the stakeholders involved. You would need to have the dedication of the stakeholders for maintaining the enterprise architecture and building and populating upon it. So it's basically data and the contribution of the stakeholders, and of course the complexity of the environment as a whole.
Okay, okay. I have one more question, and this is more of a thought process rather than just a question. If you could give out your views here. In execution of SLAs with businesses, it is also critical sometimes that organizations are too business-centric and they do not care about IT infrastructure or resource availability in IT. What's your take? Does this happen?
Well, yeah, that does happen, and it really depends on how these, let's say, center of excellence or these departments are established in the organization. So you basically have, for instance, a decentralized approach where you would have champions from all the departments. So you basically wouldn't have that issue of messages being only business oriented, because everybody from across the organization is giving the messages. But usually what we like to do, and this is one of the things that I didn't have time to mention in the presentation, that there's a role-based approach on implementing the tool. So you would have the people from HR, you would have the people from IT, you would have the people from business, all of which contribute in a different level depending on what field they are working in or what department they are working in. But you are correct. Usually, when it comes from business, there are the cases where they don't take into consideration the implications behind it. And that's why such KPIs or SLAs and whatnot, they go through somewhat a process architect or a business architect within the organization who would take into consideration these points in question when implementing any SLA or KPI.
Okay, okay. With that, Sadat, I would really like to thank you for answering all the questions in much detail and giving our viewers a 360-degree roundup about Software AG offerings. And with that, it's a close on today's virtual summit. On behalf of Global CIO Forum and Software AG, I thank all the attendees for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye and have a nice day.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Sadat.